is our Great Caldera Safari Park. It's been quite a small operation until now, but we've just been donated some land. And so, like my waistline at Thanksgiving, we're gonna expand. And I think the best way to finance that expansion is by finishing off our 4x4 adventure tour track ride. It'll be a wonderful way to let people safely see wild animals really up close. Although, if you've ever had a mandrill sit on your windshield during one, sometimes it's a little too up close. Yeah. But the main focus of the sanctuary will be breeding and releasing animals of all kinds back into the wild. And as it's a sanctuary, we'll also have to take in animals sometimes. Does that all sound simple? Good, because there's more. We also need to make sure we educate our guests and achieve a very high conservation rating. Well, that's all. Off you go.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Planet Zoo Career Mode. Today we're going to tackle the Great Caldera Safari, which is probably my second least favorite park, but we're just going to power through it to get to the next one. So we're starting out in the bronze. And the bronze goals in this park are release one of any habitat species to the wild, build a transport ride that has at least 700 meters of length, increase the guest education rating to 1.2 stars, and have at least 1,400 guests in the zoo. And I'm going to be honest, I struggled with this zoo near the end. I was basically bleeding money, and for the life of me, I could not get the amount of guests I needed, which is 2,800, I believe, but I did eventually get there. So the first thing I usually do in this zoo is I go around to the various habitats and I see where their education boards are and exactly where the electricity reaches. Basically, I do this because I tend not to add any more generators since they cost a shit ton in the long run. So pay close attention to where your power is reaching. You don't want to put education boards in those dead spots. It's a good idea to place donation boards right next to the new education boards, since the guests are more likely to give you their money if they learn giraffes have prehensile tongues and those dongles on their heads aren't horns. They're actually called ossicones. So I don't know why, but they owe you for that knowledge either way. Make sure you turn the boards and the speakers attached on, otherwise they're kind of useless. I usually double check to make sure the sounds aren't overlapping because the guests will cry about it if they are. If I'm going to be entirely honest with you, I should have been keeping tabs on the marketplace for lions. They become way less abundant the longer you play in this zoo. So if I were you, I would be planning ahead. It's always a good idea to look at all your goals because you can finish them before you've finished your bronze medal. So for silver, if you want to plan ahead for that, I try and adopt the 2 cheetahs if you can, or adopt the 2 lions for gold, since later on they don't show up as often. That's what I would go for if I was you. The African wild dogs are the last ones that need boards placed around them, and as far as getting the education rating to that 1.2, that's about all you can do. A lot of the goals in this zoo are just waiting, which makes it kind of boring, but hey. Something that you might find helpful that I didn't actually know about until just recently is using the conservation education boards, and they do help raise that need a bit faster. You could, if you wanted, play around with the educators. The first time that I played through this map, those hadn't been added to the game yet, so I never bothered with them. Once you got all those down, just let it run on its own. In the meantime, you can head over to the incomplete track ride and just start finishing that off. It needs at least the 700 meters, which is pretty easy to do. There's no tricks to it. Now, after you actually complete it, don't turn that damn thing on. You will never financially recover. The game doesn't care whether you have it running or not, just that the track is finished, so you might as well save the money. A lot of my spare time in this map is cleaning it up, because in my opinion, it's probably one of the ugliest in the career mode. Like, no offense to whoever in Frontier built it, but so much of the rock and the foliage placement in the zoo just looks bad. There's something weird about it. I don't know how to explain it, but I've never liked it. Most of the terrain preferences for the animals isn't set right either, so you could just go ahead and fix that like I do. I'd recommend starting some research, but it's not necessary. I think it improves the education boards, but I don't really know. This little stupid water source here is always dirty, and the animals are always like, I enjoy the taste of shit, so they'll always drink out of that one and not the clean stuff right next to them. So I just go ahead and seal it up and don't waste your cash on one of the water cleaners just yet. Just make it to where they can't get to it. And now is basically just starting the cleanup process for me, which if you're like me, it's going to take up the majority of this arbitrary wait times in this zoo. The water lines here look really stagnant, so I slap a metric shit ton of rocks to make it look better. Look at this bundle of rocks sticking out. Look at it. It's so bad. This could be why I burned through my money so fast, but that doesn't really matter. Back to the rock pile I made earlier, and now I'm just prettying it up with some foliage from around the habitat, and I actually end up using this particular piece as a template for later. If you make a pile of rocks and plants that you really like, you can select them, merge them together, and then copy and paste them elsewhere. Now we're back over at the African wild dog and fixing their terrain issues just like we did with the first two habitats. And I suggest after you're all done with that, you go ahead and fly on over and sort out the hyenas as well, because their terrain is also messed up and they have a few problems going on right from the get-go, aside from how awful the actual habitat looks. Speaking of which, there's this really horrendous eyesore of a bridge in the wild dog's habitat going over the water, I guess. I'm gonna go ahead and fix that up for him. Now, keep in mind, in this scenario, you can't alter terrain or water, so your best bet is to just even out all the jagged looking bumps with rocks, a lot of rocks. With that mostly taken care of, let's start giving them a bit more greenery around the space. Please remember, if you're just watching this and you haven't watched any of my other videos, that I have PZ Plus mod installed, and this time I'll link it down below if you want to check it out. That essentially it allows me to have 0 to 100% plant coverage for any animal, and that's not how it's going to be for you. I know that I don't know the exact percentage, but the wild dogs, they have a pretty restrictive amount that they'll tolerate in the vanilla game. I don't know exactly how much, but just make sure you're checking their tab if you aren't using mods or you're on console or something. Use smaller plants instead of the really huge ones and you'll basically get more coverage. I don't know when they added it, but I really love that as you start putting down plants, they'll run over to sniff them and check out what you've given them. I don't know why. I just get a kick out of that. With all those time wasters out of the way, we managed to get our 1.2 rating, and now we're fairly close to having the 1,400 guests in the zoo. Now we're moving on to decorating the hyena habitat. Nicer looking habitats will actually increase guest count, I'm 99% sure. There's a lot of factors that go into that, but I think that that's one of them. Animal happiness is another, types of animals, etc. But while I wait to see if that's going to go up naturally by itself, I decided to pretty up the hyena exhibit. Again, their water area and what rock is in there just looks really sloppy, so my goal is to clean that up. It's not much different than what I've been doing, but I personally find rock work to be therapeutic in this game, so sometimes I get a little carried away with it. You could, at this stage, adopt 2 sable antelope, put them in with the springbok and giraffe, and grab some African buffalo and put them in with the zebra and the elephant. During all this rockification, I was researching, and you actually do have an iguana in this zoo, so make sure he's good to go. Tossing down some extra enrichment for the animals isn't a bad idea either. Like I said, their happiness influences how many people come to the zoo and how much money they're willing to fork over if they see happy animals as opposed to depressed Prozac taking animals. I make a really bad move here and I opt to get rid of one of the giraffes instead of a springbok. I would not recommend getting rid of that, so don't follow my lead in that regard. Get rid of one of the springbok. Back over to the hyenas to try and entice more suckers to come to our zoo to see our plant exhibits. Who cares about the hyenas? The trees are our moneymakers here. I really don't know how much foliage influences the guest count. It just makes me feel good to put them down. And that's all that really matters at the end of the day. And after throwing down a few more bushy things into the hyenas, we hit our bronze goal.
Nice. That track ride is proving very popular with the guests. You're really giving them a taste of Africa's wildlife. And when the wind pleases, often a smell, too. Listen, I know there's lots more work to do here, but once you've finished, your next project will be something really challenging. Partly because I won't be around to offer advice. I'm setting up a venture in the Arctic, which will take up all of my time. I might even get you involved in it one day.
So that's the bronze medal down, and some things to keep in mind when you're working on this is putting up plenty of the education boards and speakers and making sure the sound doesn't overlap. You could consider putting a male and a female sable antelope and some African buffalo to get a jump on breeding the different species. And it's also a pretty good idea to keep an eye open on the market early on for a pair of lions, because as things progress, they become more rare. You could also consider getting a pair of cheetah early on too, but I'd work on the lions first. And with that being said, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.